Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second part of the webinar. Our next presenter is Samita, class 17. Samita will be sharing with us the role of technology in international development. Sorry about the delay from the previous webinar, but we hope we'll try to maintain time and finish within this specified minutes that we have. Samita, you are most welcome. Please take it up from there.
All right. Can you see my PDF presentation? Okay, awesome. Hi, everyone. So I'm excited to present this webinar on the role of technology in international development. And as most of you know, I was serving at TechChange this year as an Atlas Core Fellow. And at TechChange, we do online courses available for everybody on teaching them how to use technology for social good purposes. And in the context of international development, you hear the term ICT for D a lot. So that is information and communication technologies for development, basically. So before starting, I just wanted to kind of have you guys think about the technologies that you use every day, either if it's your mobile phone or your tablets or your computer. And just think about what you use that for. So for me, at least, what I use my technology that I surround myself, it's usually my phone or my computer, and I use that to communicate and keep in touch with friends and family, or be on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., and check email. And I think in the West, a lot of the technology that people surround themselves with is very focused on the person itself. So it's for the person to, get from X place to Y to Y place. So like, using Uber, the Uber app, or using, an Apple Pay feature. So it's very individualistic in that sense. But in developing countries, the communities have really started to use technology for a bigger purpose. So they're using it to do social good things in the community, and international development organizations are also realizing the potential that technology has. So why technology? And Harriet, let me know if you cannot see my second slide or something.
You're good.
Okay. So why technology? Today, more than ever, there are just so many mobile devices. And when I talk about mobile devices, I also mean mobile phones, but also tablets. So anything you can, carry with yourself very easily. So in October 2014, there was a survey that was done by GSMA, which is a very reputed organization that looks at the use of mobile phones in development. So they found out in October 2014 that they had already exceeded the number of people in the world by the number of mobile devices that are in the world. So there are more mobile devices in the world today than there are people. And the other reason technology is really important for us to consider is because developing countries, like I said before, are really using the power of smartphones and mobile phones for a bigger social good purpose, more than in the Western countries. And also the third reason is that all of these mobile devices and smartphones are just getting cheaper and cheaper. So one of the first blog posts that I did for TechChange was just looking at the cheapest smartphones that are available. And I believe by now there's probably a smartphone as cheap as $30. So that really allows more people to have access to smartphones. And also more and more people are connecting online. So they're using the internet. And if you go to internetlivefacts.com, I believe, you can see in real time the number of people that are coming online. So as of now, 40% of the world is online. And that might seem like, not a lot, but just in 1995, there were less than 1% of people that are online. So just the reach of technology and the internet has just been huge. And, I'm going to start digging deeper into all the tools that are available. But before that, I kind of want to preface my whole presentation with this, which is, technology is not the solution. It's a great tool, and it has great potential for different communities doing grassroots work, different international organizations doing work in developing countries, and the communities themselves. But you cannot expect to just attach technology in a proposal that you're doing for a project, or just hand out a tablet or a mobile phone to a community and expect that to change things for them. So this is very, very, very important, is that technology is not the solution, but we need to realize the potential that it has to help communities around the world. So I want to talk about mobile phones first. And mobile phones have really, really gone above and beyond in terms of their potential in international development. So one of the terms you will hear a lot when you talk about mobile phones is M for D, which means mobiles for development, which is pretty self-explanatory. So mHealth is basically the use of mobile phones in public or global health. So there is an mHealth organization called Medic Mobile. And what they do with mobile phones is in really, really rural areas, they use mobile phones to basically register pregnancy, track diseases before the outbreak happens, communicate with emergencies, etc., with people. And there's also another one called Mama, which allows pregnant mothers to, get updates from through their phone about, how many weeks they're in their pregnancy and how their baby is developing. And all of these are very important information for women living in really rural parts of the world where, it takes hours or days to get to the nearest health center. So this is really revolutionizing the way people communicate to their patients. And M-Finance is something you hear, which is basically mobile finance, or you also hear M-Banking. So the African continent in general has just been really forward with using mobile phones for a lot of these things. So Eastern Africa, especially in Kenya and Tanzania and Rwanda, M-Banking has been huge. So you might have heard of M-Pesa, but M-Pesa is just one of the mobile banking tools in Kenya, which really, really took off. So they basically allow you to do all sorts of financial transactions through your mobile phone. And it can be as simple as, for those of us who have used prepaid mobile phones, when you go and scratch a card to recharge your phone for the balance, it's kind of like that. You recharge your mobile money into your phone, and then you can do transactions. There's also another one called Zuna. And this is really important because in the developing countries, it's really hard for somebody to get an official bank account. You need all of this background check, or you just need, a lot of paperwork, and a lot of people don't have this paperwork. And also holding cash in general can sometimes be threatening to the welfare of your family. So being able to do digital transactions like this is really revolutionary. And then there's also the role that mobile phones can play in farming. So that's called M-Farm, or M-Ag for mobiles for agriculture. And Tigo Kilimo is one of the mobile apps used in Tanzania, where it allows farmers to get access to information through their mobile phones on the weather, on the kind of crops that are going to do well and when they should harvest them. And more importantly, at least I think, for them to know the market price for a lot of the crops that they're going to sell. A lot of times, farmers in rural areas will go through a middleman to sell their product to the market. And a lot of times the middlemen, cheat, and they tell the farmers that their crops are going to sell for a very low amount, but in the market they sell it for very high price. So the farmers really, really don't get all of their crops worth. And by knowing the market price for their crops, it can really put the power back in the hand of the farmer. And also there's M-Learning, which is mobile phones for learning purposes. And Duolingo is one that Adriana had mentioned in her presentation. And I personally use Duolingo, and it's a really fun way to learn different languages. And there's also other initiatives that are looking at trying to do mobile learning and creating an app for refugee children while they're on the move, for them to still learn in a non-traditional way. Because as the Syrian refugee crisis is going on for so long, a lot of children are, not being educated, and they're, they're not in school, and this is really going to affect them in the future. So finding a way for them to still learn in a non-traditional sense, because you'd be surprised, mobile phones are just everywhere now, and putting a learning app into a mobile phone can really help somebody while they're on the move. And then data collection, which Medha talked about in her presentation about paperless M&E, paperless monitoring and evaluation. So Ushahidi is one of the popular data collection tools, and they basically help you crowdsource information from all different kinds of social media and platforms, and then you have this data that you can then analyze all on their platform and also visualize, and then you can present that for different suggestions you have to your community or your government or international development organizations. So the next one is digital maps. And in April, after the earthquake in Nepal, Medha, Luther, and I were involved with Standby Task Force, and they are a digital humanitarian organization, which basically they take all of the feed from Twitter and Facebook posts, etc., that relate to the related to the Nepal earthquake, and map them all on their mapping platform that was Micromappers. And as you can see, kind of a picture of that, it's basically they were taking all of these requests for help and putting them on the map of Nepal, and then putting them in the level of the severity that they were. And that goes hand in hand with humanitarian response, because humanitarian organizations could then look at this map and then deploy their services to those specific regions. So having like a map that changes according to suggestions that are coming in is really helpful for humanitarian organizations to respond to. And also in terms of public health, digital maps are really, really helping organizations realize trends in terms of, disease outbreak by looking at maps and mapping those incidents of the disease. So also on top of that, they're also mapping different health points that are available, and that way they're able to see how much access does a community have to healthcare. And all of this goes again to the last point, which is, these maps are helping tell a story. And when these maps can be change over time, you can really see a story, and that really allows you to advocate for a change that you're trying to convince leaders in your community or leaders in different international development organizations to really do something about an issue. And other tech tool is drones. And this is kind of a controversial tool, because when we think about drones, I think a lot of us think about, how a lot of governments are using this for military purposes. And that is true. And unfortunately, with technology, it always depends on whose hands it's in. It can be in the hands of good people, and it can be in hands of bad people. So the way that drones are helping in international development and being used for social good, one way is in nature conservation. So Digital Democracy is an organization that basically, helps people use digital tools to ask for different rights that they have. So the Digital Democracy project that happened in Guyana, they went to Guyana to help the Wapichana community to basically get a sense of the deforestation that was going on in this in their rainforest. So they went down there, and then they actually taught the community how to put a drone together, how to fix it if something was wrong, and then they attached a GoPro to it, and then they took a lot of pictures above the rainforests, and then they put it out in a big map. And this was actually for some people in the community the first time that they saw how bad the deforestation was in their rainforests. And they were eventually able to take that up to their government and then tell them to do something about the illegal logging that was happening and all of the deforestation that was happening. So it allowed them to advocate with a proof. And it's also a way that humanitarian organizations can deliver really, really essential supplies to disaster-struck areas, because sometimes helicopters can be used for, a more important purpose, or sometimes in terms of Nepal, at least, earthquake. The earthquake had really destroyed a whole village, and these villages were not, there weren't even roads that went to these villages. So you can use a drone to take, essential supplies like medicine or just ropes or something. So you can really, to get creative with the use of drones, it's useful to see how you can use them. And then, of course, there's social media. And I would say this is also another controversial tech tool, because a lot of extremist terrorist organizations use social media to recruit people and spread sentiments of hatred towards groups of people. But at the same time, social media can also be used to really highlight human rights abuses that are happening in our communities and put them at the forefront of people who make these decisions. So, for example, in the Arab Spring, that whole revolution was basically called the Twitter revolution, because people were using social media to really organize and then demand all of these changes from their government. And also at the same time, in today's age, a lot of governments are, starting their Facebook page, they're starting their Twitter. A lot of ambassadors are, using Twitter. So they're really allowing people in their communities to have a, direct connection with them. So you can call organizations out if they're not, sticking to what they said, or you can call organizations out and institutions out if they're not delivering what they said they were going to deliver. So you can make them accountable. And if organizations are accused of corruption, you can really call them out and put them on the center stage. So it really has a potential to do more than just sharing Facebook updates about your life. And then there's 3D printing, which kind of might sound like a very, like too revolutionary, or like it's something that you hear about in the Western countries, just about how they make things in maker labs. But it actually can have a potential, especially in disaster response. So Field Ready is a 3D printing humanitarian organization, and what they do is, after a disaster strikes, they go to these communities and help the people in the community themselves learn how to operate a 3D printer. And most of the times they use solar-powered 3D printers, and they help them basically print out things like, water bottles or buckets so that they can transport water from one place to another, or pipes, or like screwdrivers. And these small things can be very important, because when you're in a community that's so far away that has to wait for these kind of supplies to come from the capital, sometimes people don't get the right sizes. And then by the time it arrives in your community, it's already like a week or two before you needed it, but after you needed it. But also sometimes when it's not the right size, you have to go through a whole another process and wait longer in order for you to get the right size. So with 3D printers, you can, immediately print something, and the design can be sent from anywhere in the world. And if the size is not right, you just create another one. So while these are not like permanent solutions, for immediate humanitarian response, it has a huge potential. And similarly, in terms of health, public health, people who have lost their arms or legs, prosthetics can cost a lot. And now 3D printing is really influencing the prosthetic industry. So you can 3D print a prosthetic hand very easily, and it's going to be very cheap. And also in terms of organ transplants, because now people are able to 3D print human tissue. So in October so like just a few months ago, basically, a girl basically was given a heart transplant that was 3D printed. So it's quite revolutionary, and it's something, you need to be aware of because of the potential it has. So those are basically all of the tools that I wanted you to, be aware of, and hopefully you guys have learned something new from what technology can do for international development and just for your projects or something. But I also really want us to all be aware of the risks that come with using technology. So, it's great. It can do a lot of things for you. It can save time and money and really increase efficiency. But at the same time, when you start using technology, there's a huge risk when it comes to data security and privacy. So for those of us using Facebook, Facebook knows a lot about you. And if all of that information gets in the hands of wrong people, it's really easy for them to target you if they want to. So a lot of times activists who are, defending marginalized groups or international development organizations that do data collection using technology of communities, of LGBT communities or communities of women, have all of this information, but if they are careless about data security, this can get in the hands of the wrong people. And if the data is enough that it can identify you as an individual, that can be a huge risk for these communities. And also, because technology has such a great potential and it can really, really change a person's or a community's life, the divide that comes with communities that have access to the technology versus communities that do not have access to this technology, the divide just gets bigger and bigger, and that just increases inequality. And even if you have access to technology, if you're not literate to use the tech, the divide, again, it just increases the divide between people who know how to use technology versus people who do not. And the final thought, which is I think the most important one, is that people can really get carried away because technology really can do a lot of great things. And when you start getting carried away, you start prioritizing technology over people. And I think that's when you've completely missed the point, because, yes, technology has a lot of potential and it can really, really influence your work and influence the work that your community wants to do, etc. But if you start prioritizing the technology over people, then you've missed the point. So always remember, it should be people over the technology. And that is the end of my presentation. So thank you, and I look forward to the questions. Harriet?
Yes, thank you, Samita, for that amazing presentation. Some of
I don't see.
questions and not questions. Someone says they are happy that M-Pesa has changed millions of lives in Kenya, and also Dan is affirming to that. And Maureen also highlights an example of MTN mobile money that's working in Uganda, Ghana, and some other parts of the world. Yeah, so I think it fits in well.
Yeah, I think the African continent has just really led the way in using mobile phones for mobile banking, mobile farming a lot. So they're really the leaders in, so it's cool to hear from, Atlas Core Fellows about the influence that it has had.
Yeah. Maybe I could have a question on using mobile for most especially farmers. I'll give an example of Uganda. Sometimes the direct target population is usually in rural communities where sometimes either there is limited supply of power, and so they might not be able either to have their phones fully charged, and probably sometimes they could miss out on some of the important messages and news that's out to them. Have you thought of that as a challenge, and what do you think could be some of the ways of addressing?
Yeah, definitely. I think, with technology, what you need always is the electricity to go with it. And even with the newer technologies like 3D printing and etc., like there's a lot of things you need in terms to really use that. So I think some of the creative ways people have dealt with that is like using alternative methods of electricity. So I know at least international development professionals, when they go in the field, they have like solar powered chargers so they can charge their phones, or in rural communities where they might not have access to those gadgets. I think, at least personally, I think it would be pretty cool to have sort of like how you top up, your phone for your minutes. You could maybe go charge for a small price. And I think something like that was done in Nepal after the earthquake, where, we didn't have electricity, and people who did have electricity actually just, connected power strips and allowed other people to charge it. Mm-hmm. But that is definitely something you need to keep in mind while using technology, because a lot of times I've heard of development projects that go into different communities in rural areas with like, a tablet, and they have this great idea. And when they get there, there's like no electricity. So really something to keep in mind. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, and then one last question. Dan says, M-Pesa is helping many people back home and in the different parts of Kenya, but also the same platform is stealing from people. What do you think can help to resolve this?
Yeah, and I think that goes hand in hand with my point about data security, you know, like, and M-Pesa, but also just us in general, now that we're doing a lot of our banking online and we use credit cards and ATMs, etc., that hacking becomes a real issue. And it's always important to be aware of that. And I don't know of a solution to that, but you always have to be aware. And in a digitally connected world, unfortunately, that's the risk that comes with it. And hopefully people who are, you know, getting money stolen from M-Pesa have an M-Pesa representative that they can go and talk to about it so they can get their money back, because that is the worst. Harriet?
Oh, sorry, Samita, the very last final question from Olga.
Yes.
Olga has says that her question is more philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along your presentation, you said the mobile phones are helping children in learning in developing countries. She's asking if you think these devices can help to replace the textbooks, hard paper materials that are being used currently.
Yeah, so I actually know, like, I work with a company that does online learning, and what we really are trying to address is the traditional form of education. So a lot of people think of education as, you know, you have your book, you have your notebook, you have your pens, and then you go to a building and you sit in a class. But I think I have been influenced by the way TechChange does their online courses. So I think my perspective is that education is not in the formal sense that it used to be anymore. And you don't, you know, when you sit in a group and you talk about really important issues and you learn about each other's cultures, I think that's also a form of education. And when you are on, you know, when you watch TED Talks, I think that's a form of an education. You're learning. I think as long as you're learning and you're curious, I think that's a form of education. It doesn't always have to be pen and paper, and it doesn't have to be like, you know, there's a teacher. I think you can still learn from friends, and the model of learning itself is also changing.
Great. Thank you so much, Samita, for your great presentation. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in for this webinar. Like I said, today we've had our last webinars for the month and the year. And next webinars will be in February after the GLL. So don't get worried about having webinars in January next year. So thank you so much for everyone. Samita, thank you so much. I know you and Turk have had your last presentations on the webinars. Just to wish you all the best as you go back home, and hope you keep in touch.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.